In 1964, an ambitious animator named Richard Williams spawned an idea for a movie that would consume his life. This self-funded adult animation would later come to be known as The Thief and the Cobbler, or Arabian Night, or The Thief, or just once. This movie is recognized as one of the longest drawn-out failures in the history of filmmaking, but I think that a lot of people miss that this is a story of true artistry, and this movie must never be finished. Okay, picture this. Richard Williams, or Dick Willie for short, is running an animation studio that specializes in commercials, animated sequences in live-action movies, and in this case, illustrations for a book. And right now, he is working on drawings for the English translations of Nasruden stories. Nasruden is a prominent figure in Eastern folklore, kind of adjacent to a Don Quixote character, but he's a little more in on the joke. Williams gets the idea for an animated movie series based on this character, and Nasruden serves as the first working title for many iterations to come. It's important to note that Williams has experience in creating animated sequences, sure, but they're typically 10-second commercials. After 3 years of working on Nasruden, Williams sees The Jungle Book, and he decides, I should learn how to animate. Despite some of his stunning animations in the past, Williams is outspoken in interviews about the fact that he used to struggle with the principles of animation. The skill set for a commercial doesn't always translate to a feature movie. And before Nasruden even had a clear direction, Williams was drowning in more than he could swallow. Because now, Williams has 3 hours of animation for a movie. He's like, cool. We should make a story out of this. But then Williams and the translators for the Nasruden books get in a fight about, you guessed it, money. And they almost go to the courthouse before the entire project just collapses. Paramount had their eyes on the prize and they see all this fighting going around and they're like, fuck that, and they leave. Okay, so now we're back to square one, but that's okay because it's only been, oh my god. Williams thinks that starting with a script is probably a better idea this time around, so he and his wife begin a writing. Now is where we see the foundation of what we know begin to take form. It's decided our two leads are both silent film stars. There's a thief who's trying to steal, and there's a cobbler who's trying to cobble. I guess, I don't know. He has a crush on a princess, that's the important part. And Williams isn't very caught up on the details. In fact, he still refuses to storyboard. But he is sure of one thing. This movie is gonna be his magnum opus, and probably the greatest movie ever made. But for today, while he's still working at his studio, it's just a side project. In a documentary about the creation of The Thief and the Cobbler, Williams talks about how he could buy a yacht, but this is the most fulfilling thing he could create as an artist, which is kind of awe-inspiring. And we see Williams continue to push the ball uphill on this story. Slowly but surely, he might be able to make it to the top of the mountain. One faithful day, Williams gets recommended by Steven Spielberg to work on the animation for an upcoming movie called Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Williams gets the job, and it becomes Who Framed Roger Rabbit. No other movie blends animation and live action to this level. It should be an utter failure. It is a horrible concept. And it still looks amazing today. And it makes sense that Williams' perfectionist nature would lead to such a timeless classic. Williams gets his flowers, 2 Academy Award flowers, but this also gives him the 2 most important things in the world: money and influence. Disney is like, hey Williams, do you want to serve as director of animation for this movie we have coming out called Beauty and the Beast? Or you could even work on a second Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Williams is like, no, that's okay. I'm gonna keep working on this Cobbler movie. Now that he has mucho dinero, he hires some of the best animators in town to help him out. What happened to the previous animators that were working on the movie? A lot of them left to go work at Disney, and the others died. Well, that's weird. But I guess it has been a cool little 20 years at this point. Warner Bros. Is looking at this movie and they're like, I think we can work with this. We'll help you finance your movie. Can you please just get it done by 1991? Sure. Okay, good. If not, we have this completion bond company that'll seize the movie so they can finish it. And if you're looking at the title of this video, you might recognize they didn't finish it. 1991 rolls around and Williams is begging. He's like, please, just 6 more months. I'm gonna get a quick little 10 to 15 more minutes of this movie and it'll be good to go. We've only spent $24 million. What's a little more time? Warner Bros. Says, can you just make it quick? Because your movie was picked up by Disney and they're coming out with an eerily similar movie later this year. 1992, Williams shows a rough cut of this movie, missing an entire reel of footage, and Warner Bros. Is like, okay, this is bad. This movie is still missing a few major scenes, and you spent the last year working on different scenes than what you told us. And so Williams, after 28 years, loses control of his movie. The Thief and the Cobbler and Aladdin were originally meant to release on the same day. There's debate on what Disney stole from Williams. It's an open secret that Disney got many of their character designs through leaks of The Thief and the Cobbler, as well as members of Williams' former team working for Disney. Aladdin becomes the most successful movie of 1992, and it takes the Bond Completion Company another year and a half before they release the movie. So when I was beginning research, I didn't realize that there were 4 separate cuts of this movie, and you can watch 3 of them. So there's the OG version Williams lost control of, you can't watch that one. There's the theatrical release, finished by the Bond Completion Studio, which cut 18 minutes of animation that they feel didn't pertain to the movie's larger story. And they also added a few songs. But in 1995, here in the States, we receive the Miramax cut. Sometimes it's called the Weinstein cut, which got rid of an additional 8 lousy minutes, leaving us with a 72-minute runtime with voiceovers from Matthew Broderick and Jonathan Winters. I didn't know which version to start with. So my introduction to The Thief and the Cobbler, I didn't even realize it was the Weinstein cut, and it's bad. It's remarkably bad. But why? Okay, The Thief and the Cobbler is about a cobbler named Tack who falls in love with a princess, and a thief who's trying to steal 3 golden balls atop of his city's palace. While Tack follows what we'd associate with a typical Disney love story, the thief mirrors what you see in a Merry Melodies picture. The narration added in post feels like an afterthought. The voiceovers are distracting and not funny. They tear down this experience. Instead of letting the animation do its job, the movie has to spell out what the characters are clearly thinking. The writing isn't quippy, like a, dare I say, familiar genie. However, the antagonist, Zigzag, magnetically pulls your eyes to him. He's so lively. You watch his shoes unfurl as he steps, and his hands have so much detail it's insane. Zigzag is trying to seize the kingdom and marry the princess for power, and he's a boring villain, but the animation is still great. But you could also say that for every character. The story sucks. The only redeeming quality are the visuals. There are these chase sequences in the palace where characters are running around in these optical illusion spaces. Without knowing the whole backstory, it's still some of the most striking animation you can find. There's also this lack of depth. It's hard to establish what's in the foreground and background, which is typically a problem I'd harp on for a minute, but it works for The Thief and the Cobbler's distinctive style. You end up taking in each frame as this magnificent piece of art. The amount of detail makes the unfinished parts of this movie that much more apparent, because vibrant scenery is instead replaced with a completely blue background. Furthermore, I couldn't see large portions of this movie because they're so dark. They might look good, but I wouldn't know. Nothing feels like a contained space. There's no setting that you became familiar with. In fact, this movie struggles with pacing because although what you're looking at is visually impressive, there's no rhythm. The way scenes cut into one another feels spontaneous. The songs are awful. They're unmemorable and generic. This movie sucks. But hold on, I said that there were 4 cuts. Where's the 4th? Well, the story of Williams has gained some notoriety over the years, and The Thief and the Cobbler has developed quite the cult fan base. The internet did what they do and they came up with The Thief and the Cobbler RECOBBLED cut, agreed upon by fans as the best way to watch this movie. This version is intended to be as true to Williams' original vision as possible. Shitty voiceovers removed, scenes brought back, pacing fixed, music composed, and honestly, I'm not hamming it up. It's incredible. Although at its core, the story remains the same, the additional 30 minutes save this movie. You can actually see what's happening. The small, unnecessary sequences that were cut are the best ones. A lot of the time, this movie will switch to an unfinished sketchbook-style drawing to show you that this is still a work in progress. In fact, once every few years, there's an updated release of this movie, but this still looks like a million times better. I thought that the thief and Tack not being able to talk would be jarring, but now I can't imagine why anyone would add a voiceover. It's redundant. These two are so expressive, they carry the entire movie with their face. The scenes that originally wowed me now demonstrate how butchered the color distortion is for the Miramax cut. The recobbled cut, which I linked down below, is incredible. This is the only way you should ever watch The Thief and the Cobbler. Williams' refusal to prepare or think ahead is ultimately what cost him this movie. Williams never did end up seeing the recobbled cut, and sadly he passed away in 2019. I think Williams kind of mirrors The Thief in a lot of ways. The Thief pursues the golden balls atop of the palace that are always just out of reach. He faces non-stop peril after peril for these orbs until he gives up. Williams' pursuit of something so great, given his time and resources, is ultimately what led to this project's downfall. But I think the biggest reason The Thief and the Cobbler was never going to work is because Williams was an artist. A remarkable one. After watching interviews with him, a finished version of The Thief and the Cobbler would have never fulfilled his vision. He would have never been content. Watching the commercials he worked on, you can see his level of perfectionism. In fact, he would lose money on these commissions sometimes because they would never meet his standard. This movie was doomed for failure before it even started. Because Williams pours his heart and soul into every frame, he worked on The Thief and the Cobbler for the sake of working on The Thief and the Cobbler. It's the reason this movie is labeled as a failure, and it's also one of the best displays of artistry and the love of craft. Williams never made it to the top of the mountain, but as Camus said, we must imagine Williams happy. The struggle itself is what brought forth fulfillment, because profit was never going to satisfy Williams, rather working on something he loved. The Thief and the Cobbler has been in development for 62 years now, and it's inspiring to see craftsmanship spawn a community that I hope never finishes this movie.